So, our topic is today teaching pronunciation. We have to discuss some problems. The first, the hows and ways of teaching pronunciation. How not to teach pronunciation. Start with phonemes, but not necessarily phonetic script. Next, from recognition of phonemes to practice. Pronunciation of words. 3 big barriers to good English pronunciation. Also, the hows and ways of teaching pronunciation. Teaching English pronunciation is an area of language teaching that many English teachers avoid. While there are many textbooks and instruction manuals available, as well as books on the theories and methodologies of language teaching, there is comparatively little on learning pronunciation. Why? Is it because we don't need to teach pronunciation, or because it cannot be taught? That is the question we have to clear. How not to teach pronunciation? When teachers decide to focus on pronunciation practice, many of them make the mistakes of trying to teach pronunciation along with introducing vocabulary. This can work with students who have a good ear or who perhaps speak a related language. However, it can be hit and miss with students whose mother tongue has no relation to the target language, for example, Kazakh and English. This brings us back to the question of whether pronunciation can be effectively taught at all. The answer is yes, of course, it can be taught. It is just that the way many textbooks tell us to teach it is actually one of the least effectively. The age of students in our classroom is important too. Start with phonemes, but not necessarily phonetic script. This question is important too. The dictionary defines phoneme as any of the perceptually distinct units of sound in specified language that distinguish one word from another. For example, p, b, d, and t in the English words pad, pat, bed, and bat. This definition highlights one of the key reasons that we must, as language teachers, start our pronunciation instruction at the level of the phoneme. If a phoneme is a perceptually distinct unit of sound, then we have to realize that before students can consistently produce a given phoneme, they must be able to hear it. Thus, the first lessons in pronunciation should involve your students listening and identifying rather than speaking. Once they can hear and identify a phoneme, it's time to practice accurate production of the sound. For this, pronunciation diagrams are useful. Your students need to be able to see where to put their lips and tongues in relation to their teeth. You have to explain your students the role of tongue, lips, teeth in the production of sound and word. Most sounds are articulated inside our mouth, and students have no idea what you are doing in order to produce that particular noise. In the classroom, we are recreating an accelerated vision of the infant's language learning experience. We are providing examples and stimulus through grammar and vocabulary lessons. But with pronunciation lessons, we are also breaking down language to the point of babbling noises, so that our students can play with the sounds, as infants do, and learn to distinguish meaningful sounds on an intuitive level while making use of more mature analytical skills that an infant doesn't have. Pronunciation of words. The progress will be more pronounced with younger students, but even adults will begin to give us pronunciation errors when reciting vocabulary words in isolation. It's time to make the next leap, correct pronunciation in the context of natural conversation. Make no mistake, this is a leap not because it is more physical, challenging, but because you are about to address a completely different set of barriers. When we teach on the phonemic level, we are struggling to explain physical and neurological limitations. We are talking irrelevant noises and making them significant to our students, while trying to teach them a greater range of articulation with their mouths, tongues, and lips. But when we work on pronunciation at a lexical or sentential level, we are dealing with complex emotional, psychological, and cultural motivations that require their own kind of re-education. 3 big barriers to good English pronunciation. Anxiety, learned helplessness, and cultural identity are the 3 biggest barriers to students' successful adoption of a second language. Not every student will have all of these problems, but it is a sure thing that all of them will have at least one of these problems to a greater or lesser extent. As English teachers, we have to find ways to bring these problems to our students' attention in a non-threatening way, as well as suggest tools and strategies for dealing with them. First barrier: anxiety. Anxiety is a straightforward problem to discover. Students who feel a lot of anxiety in speaking are generally well aware of the situation, and they know that it is impeding their progress. The impact of pronunciation specifically can be seen in their unwillingness to experiment with sounds, a general lack of fluency that makes it hard to blend sounds correctly, and poor control of the sentential elements of pronunciation, such as intonation or syllable stress. The best remedy for anxiety is highly structured, low-pressured practice. In other words, games, tongue twisters, poetry. For example, we can learn with our students some tongue twisters. For example, a sailor went to see what he could see, and all what he could see was see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once I caught a fish alive. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Then I let it go again. Little poetry. Rain, rain, go away. Come again another day. Rain, rain, go to Spain. Never come here again. Jazz chants, handclap rhymes, readers' theatre, and dialogue practice from textbooks can all be helpful. Structure and repetition reduce the pressure on the students and allow them to focus on pronunciation and intonation. Classroom rituals, like starting the lesson with a sad greeting and reading aloud a letter from the teacher, are also excellent ways to integrate pronunciation practice into the rest of the lesson while reducing stress for the student. You can ask your students, who is on duty today? What is the weather like? Rote phrases drilled for correct pronunciation will eventually be analyzed, and the correct pronunciation will improve overall pronunciation. Barrier 2. Learned helpfulness. Learned helpfulness is much harder to bring to a student's attention and may be difficult for the teacher to recognize. The term learned helpfulness comes from psychology and refers to the reaction people and animals have to a hopeless situation. Basically, after trying something several times and consistently being unable to get a positive result, we shut down, we stop trying. If students are getting negative feedback on their English skills, especially pronunciation, and if they try to improve but feel they haven't, they stop trying. You might think they are being lazy, but in fact, they simply don't believe they can improve. They have already given up. Likely, once it is recognized, the fix is pretty easy. Stay positive, phrase frequently and specifically, and tape students speaking so that they can hear the difference after a few months. If you can coax even a little progress out of a student, then tell the student exactly what they just did right. For example, the difference between your short A and short E were really clear that time. Let's do it again. Tape the students reading or reciting a passage at the beginning of the year, then tape the same passage every couple of months. Play the tapes for your student and let them hear how much they have improved over the course of a few months. They will probably impress themselves and you. Barrier 3. Cultural identity. Finally, the question of cultural identity has to be dealt with. Students that don't want to be assimilated into an English-speaking society aren't going to give up the things that mark them as different. An accent is a clear message about one's roots and history, and many people may be unwilling to completely give it up. As teachers, we need to ensure that students can be easily understood by others, but we don't have to strive for some Stanford English pronunciation. In fact, we should highlight for our class that after a certain point, accents don't matter much at all. Get tapes and videos of English from other parts of the world than you own. Play or watch them and have the students pick a few sentences out for your repeat. Let the students see if they can hear the differences between your English and the English on the recording. Then have them try repeating the phrases in your accent and in the other accents. It's fun. It gets people laughing. It helps students realize that there are many correct ways to pronounce imeni.